Once, there were open places like this all along the coast of Southern California. Today, this spot, called the Dana Point Headlands, is one of the last undeveloped oceanfront spaces left. But the Headlands is privately owned land, and by the 1990s, the owners wanted to use it to build a lucrative development of houses, hotels, and shops. The development would generate jobs and tax revenues for the city of Dana Point, but it also threatened to increase traffic congestion and to destroy a natural treasure. How does this community weigh trade-offs and confront the opportunity costs involved in deciding how to develop on the Headlands? The city of Dana Point is in South Orange County along the Southern California coast. With its relaxed harborside atmosphere, it is a favorite vacation spot for people who live in nearby Los Angeles and San Diego. Those visitors flock to the harbor, restaurants, and shops. They enjoy many local attractions. This includes views of the Dana Point Headlands. Until the 1980s, the owners of the Headlands had made little effort to develop it. But the growth of nearby resorts and communities in this area known as the American Riviera meant there was big money to be made on that idle Headlands property. In September 1991, the owners of the Headlands submitted a development plan for their land. The first plan they proposed consisted of 2 resort hotels, 19 acres of specialty shopping, and about 550 homes. To proceed, they needed an agreement with the city of Dana Point for the development. The mayor, Judy Curreri, and most of the city council supported the developer's plan because of the tax revenues it would generate.
We need some type of revenue, and right now the city enjoys 1/3 of their income comes from the hotels that we currently have. And projecting another 10 or 20 years out, in order to continue providing the services that our community has expected and enjoyed, we do need to think of the revenue that visitors would bring to our city.
Patti Short is the president of the Dana Point Chamber of Commerce.
Well, I think the question of development on the Headlands is important for a couple of reasons. First of all, the property is private property, and the private property owner does have the right to develop his property. That's one issue. I think the other thing that I find important is that there is a lot of desire on the part of the community to have access to that property. The most beautiful part of the Headlands, and the part that to me is what the public should be able to appreciate, is fenced off.
But some citizens were alarmed by the plans. They believed a big new development would bring more people and traffic and would threaten their quality of life. William Peterson is an optometrist who moved to Dana Point primarily for the surfing.
I think that most of us feel that the property owner has a right to build on that property, but I think they have to do it in a very conscientious way. And I think that the city council should get away from thinking of the Dana Point Headlands and being some kind of cash cow for the city for the next 50 years. I think that's a much more responsible track to take than to allow another hotel and another commercial area to be built out on a piece of property that is the most prominent and visible piece of property in Orange County.
Another facet of this issue was the community's attachment to the beautiful open spaces of the Headlands. Even though it was privately owned and some areas were fenced off, it had a long legacy of public access. To some, it was the heart and soul of Dana Point. To keep it that way, the questions were how to pay for it and whether the city could afford for it not to be developed. Gary Wright is co-owner of the Killer Dana Surf Shop.
As a business owner, I really, by all rights, should probably want the development to happen because that'll bring more people and more revenue to my business in the short term. But as a lifelong resident, my view is that I think in the long run the open space will bring more people into the Dana Point area, and in the long term it'll enhance my business because this area will become popular because of the open space. as opposed to becoming popular because of the development.
Jack Cantu is owner of the Dana Point Hobie Sports Shop.
Development on the Headlands would mean to me, as running a retail business, would be increased sales. It would bring more people into our shop. It would bring more people into our city. Most definitely generate more income for this business, and I would think any business in this town. So I think the development of the Headlands, as it was planned, is a fair and an honest development, and it would definitely increase our business.
One potential solution was having the city propose a bond measure to buy the land to prevent all development. The opportunity cost for that action would be tax increases for all Dana Point property owners, as well as a possible decrease in some city services. In 1993, a city survey indicated that 72% of the people of Dana Point wanted the city to buy the Headlands to save it as open space. But when told the estimated $120 million purchase price for the entire property would cost the average Dana Point homeowner $750 a year for 30 years, 65% opposed the idea. Development supporters were pleased that the results killed hopes for a city bond measure.
I can't see 2/3 of our citizens voting to raise their taxes for 30 years to buy that property and kind of leave it the way it is. Because not only would we have to buy it, we'd have to make it a park. We'd also have to invest in money to make it a park.
But opponents said the survey was incomplete. Residents should have been asked about paying for some, not all, of the Headlands. Jacqueline Cain was a co-founder of the Dana Point Headlands Conservancy.
And I think that's what a lot of people in Dana Point would like the city to do, is to look, sit down and look at what the city is capable of doing to acquire the money to purchase the land, or more of it, as much as possible, and to keep it from being developed.
A compromise plan was needed, one that the community could afford. On April 26, 1994, as these issues were still being debated, the City Council of Dana Point and the landowners agreed on a scaled-down development. This included one hotel rather than two, fewer houses, and the conservation of some land as parks and preserves. The result was a zoning arrangement termed the Specific Plan. Public opinion on this issue was divided.
The plans that I've seen show such huge buildings, the hotels are enormous, 300 or 400 room hotels. That's not a small hotel. And I just don't like the idea of seeing that out my dining room window instead of looking out to Catalina like we do now.
Well, I thought the specific plan, the most recent specific plan, was the best plan that had come forth. This particular plan had the least density, it had one hotel, and had the most open space. So looking back over time, it certainly was the most workable, in my opinion.
At the time that the specific plan came through to the city council, I felt we'd gotten as much compromise as we could.
From what it looked like a good plan for the trade-off. I mean, I saw the original plan with like over 1,000 living units, and there was no room for park space. So we would have got nothing out of it. This plan allows more access to the beach, access to the cliffs. The piece of land that they're going to develop, no one really uses anyway, except maybe walking up there to look at the scenery. So I thought it was a good plan.
I think that if a viable plan were developed by the city, that the citizens of the city could pay for the land, then I think it would be an issue that would be well worth looking into. I think the citizens of Dana Point would be willing to pay for it if it were presented properly and in a way they could afford to do it.
Immediately after the council vote, opponents began a petition drive to call for a referendum on the issue. Within a month, they had enough signatures to allow Dana Point citizens to decide the fate of the development plan in the upcoming November election. If you were a citizen of Dana Point, how would you vote? A, to support the development plan. B, to reject the development plan. In the November 1994 election, the citizens of Dana Point rejected the City Council's decision to approve the developer's specific plan. The development was stopped, at least temporarily. In December 1994, the landowners filed a lawsuit against Dana Point, claiming that the city was exerting too much control over their land. So far, the courts have upheld the citizens' vote, but they also ruled that Dana Point must approve a development plan in the near future. With both sides of this issue equally determined, the Dana Point Headlands would continue to be controversial for quite some time to come.